You're listening to The Sustainable Angler, and my daddy is the host.
All right, well, special thanks to my sweetheart for the introduction, and welcome to the Sustainable Angler Podcast. I'm Rick Crawford, angler, sustainability consultant, and founder of Emerger Strategies. This season, we're launching the Sustainability Blueprint, a deep dive into how fishing and outdoor brands can grow, meet retailer demands, navigate emerging regulations, and protect the places we all love. If you're part of the fishing and outdoor industry, this is your roadmap to surviving and thriving in a changing world. Let's build better brands and protect what we love together. Today on the Sustainable Angler, I'm joined by Meg Careny, who is an outdoor and environmental writer with a passion for environmental advocacy and sustainable storytelling. She covers topics across the outdoor industry, from innovative gear design and greenwashing to corporate accountability and chemical pollution. Her work has appeared in publications including Field & Stream, Grist, SF Gate, Ski Magazine, and Gear Junkie. Meg is also the author of Outdoor Minimalist, Waste Less Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking, and the creator of the Outdoor Minimalist and Forever Chemicals podcasts. Meg shares some tips on how to camp with less waste by conducting a waste audit after your trip, the latest threats to our public lands, which includes a proposed toxic copper sulfide mine by a foreign mining company located upstream of the boundary waters. And we also dive into PFAS and the fishing and outdoor industry and how Meg looks to see if outdoor brands have a sustainability page on their website, an impact report, or is demonstrating that they are substantiating their environmental claims to avoid greenwashing. We also discuss what gives Meg hope for the future. Hope you enjoy. And before we dive into the interview, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly grateful that you take the time to listen to this podcast. I hope these conversations inspire you to take action for nature. If you're enjoying the show, a quick free way to support it is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. The Sustainable Angler is available anywhere you listen to podcasts and is also airing Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Charleston's first and only community-supported radio station, OM Radio, 96.3 FM. This episode of The Sustainable Angler is brought to you by Emerger Strategies, Ecolytics, and a New Earth Project, the sustainability initiative of Atlantic Packaging. Hey everybody, Rick Crawford here. If you're running a fishing or outdoor brand, you probably got into this business for the freedom, a desire to work in an industry that you actually care about, and to protect what you love, not wrestle with sustainability scorecards and compliance regulations. But here's the truth. Retailers and regulators are paying close attention, and the brands that can answer clearly are the ones that keep their products on the shelf. That's where Emerger Strategies comes in. We help brands get retailer and regulator ready, and we help you make the business case for sustainability, so compliance strengthens your brand instead of slowing it down. That's why I built the Compliance Ready Brand Blueprint. It's a clear, practical roadmap that shows you what matters, what's coming, and gets your sustainability house in order in 30 days. If you want to protect your brand, your margins, and what you love, you'll find the blueprint at emergerstrategies.com. If you're running a fishing, outdoor, food, or apparel brand, sustainability isn't just marketing. It's directly tied to the landscapes, waterways, and communities your business depends on. But actually tracking and improving your impact can get complicated fast. Ecolytics is a software platform that helps values-driven companies measure and manage their environmental and social impact all in one place. Ecolytics helps replace scattered spreadsheets with a clear system for tracking things like emissions, sourcing practices, and social impact, so you know where you stand and what to improve next. They specialize in helping companies pursue B Corp certification, one of the most rigorous and respected standards for business sustainability. What I appreciate is that Ecolytics works hand in hand with sustainability consultants, including folks like me. That means companies get expert guidance and a platform that keeps the work organized, credible, and audit ready. Whether you're exploring B Corp certification or just getting started with sustainability as a business, Ecolytics turns your good intentions into measurable action. To learn more, visit ecolytics.io. That's ecolytics.io. And mention the Sustainable Angler podcast to get a discount on your first year subscription. Thanks to Ecolytics for supporting the show and for supporting businesses that protect the places we love.
I know. I'm super excited, Rick. You've been on my podcast, so I'm really glad that I could come back.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. That was super fun, and I'm excited that we're able to do this. So, Meg, for listeners who may be new to the outdoor minimalist, how do you describe what you do and why you focus so much on the intersection of outdoor recreation, policy, and sustainability?
Yeah,
Good
so
question.
I know. How much do you want me to say about this is the real question. So basically, through my 20s, because I'm in my early 30s now, through most of my 20s, I worked in the outdoor industry in like multiple capacities as a guide. I really enjoyed getting outside and lived a nomadic life. And at the same time, I was a freelance writer. And I guess through my work in the industry, I just noticed that there was this lack of attention being put on how our goods are manufactured and the like impact of the whole life cycle of a product. So say like a tent or a backpack or even our hiking boots. And I was like, why aren't more people talking about this? Why are all these media companies talking about products all the time, of course, to get money, but why are they shilling out all of these goods that are harming these beautiful places? Maybe not in our country, but like other countries have amazing recreational opportunities, and they're harming these places that we love to go and play. And so I was like trying to find a way to talk about these things because it didn't really seem like an industry conversation outside of the brands themselves. Like average recreationalists weren't talking about it to the capacity they were talking about things like Leave No Trace. And so I started a blog about that topic. It's not up any longer. Okay, so don't try to look for it. But I started talking about like how to do zero waste backpacking. I put that in quotes because it's not really possible to do, or just like sustainable manufacturing, or how to identify greenwashing when you're shopping for products. You know, try to give people like me who love to go outside more information about how to purchase their products ethically and ask companies to make their products more ethically. So that's how that started. And from my blog, a publisher saw that work and they asked if I wanted to write a zero waste backpacking guide. And much like I already said, I don't love the term zero waste. And so I pitched the book proposal of Outdoor Minimalist because I felt like it was a little bit more approachable and applicable to most people's lives. Because if you're familiar with minimalism, it's really a lifestyle and like a mindset shift in terms of how can we minimize our impact. And I guess your listeners might not identify with this so much, but I'm also vegan, and the like root of veganism is to minimize your impact. And that's really what the origins of that movement was. And so minimalism and veganism kind of went hand in hand with me. And I just wanted to talk about it more after I was done with the book. And my brother recommended that I start a podcast because I wanted to talk about it within the industry. Because I was like, well, individuals, of course, we make a difference. Everyone makes a difference. But we're kind of these little fish in a big pond. And the industry is where we're going to have the most movement in terms of minimizing our impact. So, I mean, I guess outdoor minimalism means what you want it to mean. But at its core, it's how can we create the least harm when we are getting out and doing the activities that we enjoy. And that starts before we even get out on the water, on the hiking trail. It starts with what we're wearing, how we're getting there, and kind of how we're building those communities.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I took a page from, or some inspiration, I should say, from your blog, and I was going on a fishing trip in the Everglades, and I did try to do a plastic free camping trip because we were camping and fishing. Um, it was tough, and it was actually not possible because, for one, the fishing gear, fishing line made out of plastic, things like that, PVC, but also even from like getting ice for the coolers for the week, like that was the thing. Like I could not escape the plastic, but it was a cool experiment. Like it was, you're like, can we do it? And so like, um, I bought things in bulk and brought my own containers instead of buying, pre-made snacks and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I'm curious from your book and your experience with that, how what are some tips for anglers who are going on their next camping trip and maybe want to do it a little bit more in a minimalist fashion?
Well, I guess what I recommend the most, and that is also in the book, is to do a waste audit. And
Yeah.
so you kind of go out on a trip. So I have done this multiple times in my life. I'll go out on whatever kind of expedition you want to do. And then when I come back, I keep all of the trash, as you should anyway. You should be packing everything out that you bring in. And so you should have it on hand. And then I go through it and I actually log the amount of trash that I created. So then I can look at that and say, okay, next time I just want to cut down a little bit. And so I identify, say, maybe I had all those little drink packets or something for electrolytes. Is there a way that I can create less waste and purchase maybe the powder in bulk or get the little tablets that come in a larger container? Just finding little ways, or maybe making it yourself, because you can make electrolyte drinks yourself. So that's just one example, but I guess usually what I do and then what I tell people to do is to start small,
Mhm.
because I think with any type of zero waste minimalist type movement, what a lot of people end up doing is they try to flip their entire life right away, and then it becomes overwhelming and they're like, oh, this is impossible, and then they give up.
Yeah.
And so that's why I like the waste audit idea. It's not my idea, so I'm not claiming that. Okay. That's something that has been discussed in the zero waste movement for many, many years. I just found it to be very effective because it gives you this physical reference point for the amount of waste that you are creating. And then it gives you kind of a jumping off point to say, okay, well, I can buy this in bulk, or I can just not bring this. Or you can do the same thing with your gear or your closet. It doesn't have to necessarily be trash. You can go into your closet and identify how much of my clothing is petrol based, how much of this is like polyester based, and then you can start replacing some of those items. I don't want to say just like throw your clothes out, because that's not really ethical either, because it's already been created. But how can you start moving towards more natural materials? So things like ethically produced bamboo, apparel, or hemp, or something in that arena. I know that it's kind of hard with fishing because you can't really have things like cotton or hemp because they absorb so much water.
Yeah.
But there are blends and things like that that can help you start to move away from relying on so much plastic and so much petrol based materials.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So as some of your fishing clothes start to wear out on you, you could replace them with some more natural fibers or alternatives that have less plastic and petrol based. Love it.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's not always plastic. I just think plastic is an easy place to start because it's
Yeah.
such a major polluter. And then as you start to phase those things out, because plastic is one of the hardest things to phase out, especially in like outdoor recreation, then you can kind of move on to other things.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Um, Okay, so you have covered a lot of ground in the last few years. I'm a listener and a fan of your podcast, and you're covering everything from gear to public lands to chemical policy. Um, what has felt maybe the most urgent lately in the outdoor space for you?
The most urgent lately. Oh, there's so many things. And it's so the reason that we cast such a wide net in terms of our coverage on the podcast specifically is one, because we can and we're an independent production, and two, because it's all related. You
Yeah.
know, everything is political, unfortunately, especially in this day and age. But I would say the most pressing issue that I am seeing currently, like in current events, is this move to commoditize public lands for the use of industry alone. Because our public lands, like the Forest Service and BLM, Bureau of Land Management, those lands are meant to be multi-use and multi-purpose. So industry has a place on those lands, but so does off-roading, so does fishing, so does hiking and biking, because the outdoor recreation economy is also a huge generator in our entire nation. And so this current administration with the Department of Interior under Doug Burgum, and then Brooke Rollins in the agriculture sector, which also manages some public lands like the Forest Service. I think everyone thinks that the department is the only manager of public lands, but Brooke Rollins also has power over the Forest Service. And so we're kind of just seeing this, what did they call it? What does the administration call it? The energy dominance agenda,
Yes.
which becomes increasingly dangerous with the rhetoric against climate change, and for fossil fuel extraction, for mineral extraction in general. And to the scale that they're wanting to push it is just, it's detrimental to our culture, the heritage of those lands, as well as the health of our communities. And moving towards more fossil fuel extraction is not advantageous. It's just not. I don't know how like deep you want me to go into it, because I feel like I could go
Well,
down a rabbit hole. You know what I mean?
well, I think that I mean, my opinion, which is backed by science, is that, you know, fossil fuels is 20th century thinking. Like we're past that. We're grasping for that. And it's just the bottom line is that the rest of the world is moving forward with a renewable energy agenda. And the United States is putting itself at a competitive disadvantage by continuing to go down this path. So, you know, I think that for me as an angler who has spent countless hours camping and fly fishing on public lands, it's personal, right? Because it's not only is climate affecting cold water species like trout in a very negative way, but it's also, you know, for me, I have kids, and it's not the legacy that that needs to be left for them. I want to be able to take them fly fishing and do all these things, and we're hindering our ability to do that by continuing to drill, baby, drill. That is not the answer, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, I agree. And I think public lands, for probably listeners to your podcast, are an issue that they care about. And you can care about other issues as well, because everything that is happening with the administration, a lot of it actually intersects with public lands, which I find interesting. You know, like this energy dominance agenda, that intersects with public lands. Immigration, that intersects with public lands because of the militarization of the border. And so there's all of these pieces that are intersecting with public lands. And so they're kind of treating these places that we all cherish so much as just like pawns in their political agenda. And I don't think that's anything that most people, it doesn't really matter which side of the aisle you're on, would necessarily agree with.
yeah, 100%. Okay, so if you could give sort of, I know we talked a pretty high level overview there, but the state of public lands today, like this has been since last year, right? It's been like one thing after the next. It's hard to follow. And I'll take this opportunity to thank you for your coverage on your podcast. I stay informed on what's happening with public lands thanks to your good work. So thank you for that. But for anglers out there who are listening to this, what's happening in, let's see, what's February 4th? We'll be specific because this could all, who knows what's going to happen next. But what's the latest that you're hearing on the public lands front as it stands today?
Well, I mean, there's just an onslaught of attacks. So there's so many things to be paying attention to. Like you said, I feel like our attention is pulled in so many different ways, which is purposeful. When a government moves in this way, they mean to shock the public and cause a lot of chaos. So then it feels like you are paralyzed and you can't take any action. But in terms of public lands, I mean, the increase in mineral extraction and fossil fuels is where a lot of the issues are stemming from. So I guess the most current and relevant example I'll give that many people who hunt and fish will care about is the Boundary Waters in northern Minnesota. I'm originally from Minnesota, and I've been to the Boundary Waters every year of my life. For the last 33 years. So it's very, very important to me personally, but it's also really important in terms of how public lands will be managed moving forward, because what they're doing is they're not necessarily stripping protections for the wilderness area, but there's this long-standing battle to build this mine. It's a copper sulfide mine owned by Twin Metals, which is a subsidiary of Antofagasta, a Chilean mining company. And so it's not even an American mining company. So it doesn't benefit national security in the argument that Pete Stauber has put forward, the representative from Minnesota who pushed this through. But because this mine has been trying to open in the watershed of the Boundary Waters for so long, what Pete Stauber did is he introduced something under the Congressional Review Act, and this was starting to be used last year. And many scholars in terms of like public lands policy and law kind of raised the alarms for this to say this is a really dangerous precedent, because essentially the Congressional Review Act allows Congress to look at any resource management plan across the United States and say, actually, that does not apply anymore. And so the reason Pete Stauber introduced this in Minnesota is because he wants to roll back a 20-year mining ban in that area, which would then allow, if it passes in the Senate, it would then allow Antofagasta, the Chilean mining company, to get the lease and then start mining in that watershed. And Pete Stauber reiterates over and over again that no, there's no mining in the Boundary Waters, but everyone knows that. But the thing that's not being talked about they're forgetting to talk about the fact that water does not abide by arbitrary land boundaries. And so if a copper sulfide ore, which has a near perfect track record for polluting water anywhere in the world, so if you look at any copper sulfide mining in the world, if it's near a water source, it pollutes it. And the chemical reaction that it gets with fresh water specifically, it basically turns it to battery acid. So it's going to kill things in that ecosystem. It's not going to allow us to recreate. And since mining stopped being the primary economic driver in northern Minnesota decades ago, it has shifted to an outdoor recreation economy. So the people in that community, so say like Ely, Minnesota is one of the main entry points to go into the Boundary Waters. The people in that community, for generations, they haven't mined. Their entire livelihood is based on people's access to this wilderness. And so that long drawn out explanation is first,
great.
The Senate has not voted on this. It did pass in the House, which is unfortunate, but it can be stopped in the Senate. So anyone listening, you can contact your senators and tell them to vote no on the House Joint Resolution 140, which is to roll back this mining ban. But the reason that this specific issue is so important is because it's representative of what can be done in other areas. And we're already seeing it in other states that have a stronghold of Republicans in Congress. So Utah would be the next example. And they introduced it last year. Celeste Malloy, she's a Republican representative there. She asked the committee, hey, can we use the Congressional Review Act to remove protections for Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument? So you can kind of see the progression here. If the Boundary Waters CRA Congressional Review Act rollback happens in Minnesota, then it's going to embolden Congress to then take more aggressive actions on things like our national monuments. So that's kind of like happening. We've already seen rollbacks on some resource management plans in 2025 in the fall. They rolled some back in Alaska, North Dakota, and Montana, I believe. There may have been another state in there. But that was kind of like their first dipping their toes in the water, like, can we actually do this? Because this is a weird, secret, hard to explain loophole. And it would allow them to remove any resource management plan dating back to 1996 when the Congressional Review Act was introduced as a tool that Congress could use.
Wow. Well, thank you for that explanation. And sounds like anglers, if you're listening, the action item here is to contact your senators and tell them to vote no on House Joint Resolution 140. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's correct. And they don't have a date set for the actual vote in the Senate. But one thing that I will say is it should happen at the beginning of February here, either this week or next week, depending on how things go, because there were delays due to the civil unrest that's happening in Minneapolis, and then like a potential partial shutdown. So there are delays happening in Congress in terms of like when they can vote, but we should expect a vote in February. So I'm not sure when this episode comes out, but if it happens before the vote, definitely be calling. And you don't have to live in Minnesota to care about this, right? Because this will eventually affect all of the United States, and also your senators will vote on this. It's not just Minnesota senators that will have a say.
Yeah, and something too, just in case anyone listening to this is kind of maybe just getting educated on our public lands, I mean, we as the American public own that land. Like that's our land, for certainly for my listeners to hunt or fish on, but also to recreate, to bike, to hike, to camp, to do all sorts of things related to this outdoor recreation economy that is generating. I think the number that I've seen out there is like $1.2 trillion outdoor recreation economy, and so it's not just a there's economic reasons to protect this beyond just, hey, this is the right thing to do. It's not right to come into an area that's going to pollute the watershed for millions of people that their businesses and their families rely on the outdoor recreation economy. It's just not the place for this. And to do this in a way to find loopholes and then start to actually roll some of this out is what I'm hearing, right? With Grand Staircase, and you're starting to see this, is very dangerous. This is not a good precedent to set for the future of our public land. So for those listening who maybe feel compelled to have their voice heard, call your senators sooner rather than later.
Yes.
So, okay. So there's so much more we could talk about on public lands, but I think that is a perfect overview for the state of what is pressing today. Is there any sleeper issues with public lands maybe no one's talking about that you know of?
I mean, I think the main sleeper issue is the Congressional Review Act, because it's hard to talk about, it's hard to explain, and many of these votes are happening in the middle of the night. So if we remember the Mike Lee land sell-off that happened and got the whole outdoor community uproared in 2025 in the summer, that also was a middle of the night decision. So they're trying to like pass all of these secret legislative moves because they know that the public is not going to be happy about it. And so they're trying to prevent these public comment periods, which we're seeing in a lot of different places. So the prevention of public engagement with public lands, I think, is the biggest issue. I don't know if I could say there really is a sleeper issue with public lands. I mean, things that we can look to on the horizon that will be up for a vote and will be up for public comment are things like the roadless rule
Yeah.
revisions, which were discussed a lot last year. That will be coming up again, probably this spring for a public comment period. There's a lot happening in Alaska, which is kind of going under the radar. I mean, things with the Ambler Road, the roadless rural rollbacks will severely impact the Tongass rainforest in Alaska. But I guess one issue that's not necessarily talked about widely in outdoor communities, or as widely as it should be, is the impact on indigenous populations with all these public lands rollbacks, because there's many sacred sites that are being removed. There were some in Washington State, close to where I used to live, that they're kind of giving these leases for different types of energy development and trying to disregard the fact that they were previously protected due to, like, I don't know what to call, sacred grounds for indigenous populations that live in that area and should have the most say over what happens to those lands.
Right.
So that's one issue that I wish more communities were discussing and collaborating across the board. I think a positive with public lands management that has been happening is with advocacy groups in the outdoor space, with outdoor communities. They are collaborating a lot more interdisciplinary wise to try and prevent these major rollbacks from happening. But I think we can't forget that who the land belonged to first. And they're being disregarded a little bit more aggressively than they have been previously.
Interesting. Well, I know that as a merger strategy, as a member of the Conservation Alliance, so I know that they have their brands for public land. So if you're a brand owner or CEO or anyone listening to this, I would encourage you to step up and put your brand behind public lands. That's an avenue that you could consider. So now we're going to shift gears. Okay.
We set out with a New Earth project to really start a movement.
It's a global coalition of people who are deeply concerned and want to accelerate the transition away from problematic packaging to more sustainable solutions.
Our entire value proposition was built on helping companies package things better. We were doing sustainability before sustainability was cool. We just called it packaging optimization. And packaging optimization really is about using less. And we built our whole business on that. You know, people send us their products, their goods, and we help them design packaging systems and solutions for the least possible cost, utilizing the least amount of material. Use less is always the right answer.
And that's what I see with companies like a New Earth Project, is it's like we're just trying to create solutions for big companies and small, that makes it easier for them, cheaper for them, whatever it is, and then has less impact. Not just trying to tell people you should have less impact and making the choice forced on them. Like, make it better for everybody, and it'll make it better for the whole world.
We see the problem, and we are with you.
I learned a ton from your podcast series, Forever Chemicals. For those of you listening who maybe aren't familiar, maybe you're just starting to hear about it, I actually saw an article, which I haven't read truthfully, but I saw the headline on the Post and Courier today about the discovery of PFAS in the upstate that the local riverkeeper had studied. I've also read accounts of PFAS, which are forever chemicals, in Charleston Harbor, right? Because we have military bases here, and so I guess as a kind of a starting point, and assuming that someone has not heard of PFAS, what are they, and why is this becoming increasingly regulated and increasingly in the news?
Oh man, PFAS,
Yeah.
forever chemicals. So PFAS, PFAS, is an acronym that stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. And it's an entire class of chemicals. There's tens of thousands of types of PFAS, but they're used widely in manufacturing for things like Teflon is the most famous example of this because it was one of the first identified polluters in West Virginia for PFAS chemicals, but they're also used in things like carpet manufacturing, in things like Gore-Tex waterproofing. Gore-Tex did move away from it in that line, but W.L. Gore and Associates, the owner of Gore-Tex, they still use it in some of their other product lines. It's used in makeup, really anything that is waterproof, stain resistant, is likely to use PFAS. And the reason that this is an issue is because for a really long time, decades, in fact, since they were invented really and started to enter the consumer landscape in the 50s, many of these companies, so DuPont, the founder of Teflon, which is now Chemours, they hid their scientific studies and their findings that these chemicals are harmful to human health. So then they could continue to manufacture these things. We saw the same thing with 3M in Minnesota. There's been countless lawsuits against these types of companies for polluting water in areas like Minnesota, in West Virginia, in South Carolina, really across the world. We are now seeing that this is a global contamination crisis because where did the name forever chemicals come from is, well, it's easier to say than per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, but also it's because these chemical compounds persist forever. So every molecule of PFAS that was ever created still exists today. And that makes it really difficult to remove, not only from our ecosystems, but from our bodies. So our bodies hold on to it for periods of time. So we'll see these hot spots in areas usually that have some type of manufacturing that uses PFAS, or they're close to a military base that uses firefighting foam, aqueous film forming foam, which is based in PFAS. We'll see that runoff. We'll see illegal discharges from places like that, airports as well. And then it will get into the water system. It'll get into the soil. It'll get into our crops. And then that just goes out into the broader ecosystem of humans consuming and being exposed to these dangerous chemicals. And so if we use like the original Maine lawsuit that came out of Parkersburg, West Virginia, which is a great feature film called Dark Waters, featuring Mark Ruffalo, about this exposure. It follows the 20-year lawsuit that Robert Ballot put towards DuPont because they essentially poisoned an entire community. There's 70,000 or so people in that area that were exposed to extremely high levels of PFAS. And when that happens, especially in your water and you're consuming it every day, it can cause a lot of health issues, including different types of cancers, lots of thyroid issues, because it interrupts your endocrine system and your hormones. But of course, we are exposed in other ways as well. So if you were to test every human on Earth, we all would have some level of PFAS in our bodies. It just kind of depends on the level of exposure that we have and how much our body is really like having to fight against that before we actually get sick. So that's a lot to say, but essentially it's used in so many different consumer goods. It's impossible for us as average people to avoid PFAS.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're seeing this play out a lot. And I know in the fishing industry with like waders and different products, right, that were designed to repel water because you're in the water. And it's likely that was PFAS before all this attention got brought to it. So I'm curious in your work, where does PFAS show up most prominently with gear in the outdoor industry? Is it kind of the same? I wear this fishing hat, so I always think about how it affects fishing companies, right, or brands. But what about the broader outdoor industry?
I would say it was most widely used in textiles. Luckily, at the beginning of 2025, California banned the use of PFAS in all textiles, which forced the outdoor industry companies to phase it out because California's economy is just so big and they're not going to manufacture two separate ones. So that's why I mentioned like Gore-Tex, they had to redo their manufacturing and for things like their Gore-Tex liners because they were no longer going to be legally allowed to sell them in states like California and other states as well. I know like Minnesota and New York and a handful of others have followed suit and they have banned it as well. And so luckily we are seeing the phase out in the outdoor industry, but it can still be found in other products. I would still be careful with anything that is labeled waterproof because since we love talking about loopholes, many companies will use the loophole to the fact that only certain types of PFAS are really regulated. So some regulations are trying to ban the chemical as an entire class, while other companies are trying to say, well, this type of PFAS is not as dangerous. And can they prove that? Not really, until it begins to poison people. So that's a big issue that we have in terms of chemical management in the United States is it's not deemed dangerous until someone is harmed.
Right.
But yeah, I would avoid things that say they're waterproof. If they say they're stain resistant, just look at the material composition. Because usually, like if you're shopping online, that's easy to do. It'll just say like what it's made from. And if it says it's waterproof and it doesn't tell me how it actually is waterproof, I just assume that is a PFAS like product or some variety. Because more ethical and like up-to-date brands will be labeling whether or not it is PFAS free, or they'll say no intentionally added PFAS because since it's so prevalent, it can like come off in the manufacturing process, or like receipts will have it on a lot. So if you put a receipt in a shoe box, it can come off onto the shoes. So there's just so many different things. So it's hard for me to say like this one thing has the most of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the easiest place to start is to begin avoiding the phrases waterproof, stain resistant.
Gotcha. Love it. Well, what about, are there any brands that you think are doing this well and deserve some credit for addressing PFAS in their products?
Yeah, I definitely say European brands were a little ahead of the curve here. So a few of those like Jack Wolfskin, Houdini, Sportswear, Fjallraven, and then some more American-based brands. Keen was one of the first American companies to remove PFAS from their footwear. So that was a huge step forward in terms of like trying to push the industry away from PFAS. Other ones, when this California ban came into play, that kind of like began to jump in and engineer some different chemical components. Would be like Outdoor Research has some pretty good stuff. Patagonia worked in tandem with Gore-Tex to reformulate to their new EPE liner. So that is positive. They could have switched earlier, I will say that, but I love to see the progress forward now.
Yeah.
And then like long-standing brands that never used any PFAS are Nikwax and Paramo. They're based in the UK. Mm-hmm. And Nikwax is, I'm sure many anglers have heard of this, to like re-waterproof your gear. Yeah. That one is a really good option and a good example of what could have been, because since they were founded, I think in 1945-ish, don't quote me on that, just look it up yourself, sometime in the 40s. They have never used PFAS. Like that is part of why they wanted to make the company, is they wanted to use something that was safe to waterproof their gear, and that wouldn't use harmful chemicals. So that's like built into their brand DNA. So I love Nikwax, and Paramo is like a sister brand to that. I think that they have been doing great work for a really long time.
All right. Well, I have to give a quick shout out to my buddy Alex Lauver with Douglas Strategies. He used to work for OR and was really involved with getting PFAS removed, and is also now working with NICWAX, which is awesome. So anyway, Alex, if you're listening, shout out, great work.
Yes, he was in the Forever Chemicals podcast talking about outdoor research as well.
Yeah,
So
love it. All right, cool. So that's a high level overview of PFAS. I think that was great. And so thank you for that. Now we're going to shift gears again and we're going to talk about greenwashing. And so for those of you listening, who maybe are not a sustainability nerd like myself, you may not even know what greenwashing is, but it is basically when a company claims to be or portrays itself to be as sustainable or have less impact on the environment, when in fact it doesn't. So it's basically like kind of lying to consumers that they're better than they actually are, right? I mean, is that a fair definition from your standpoint?
yeah, I mean, it's just a marketing ploy to try and get people to buy things that are not actually as ethically made as they say.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you've got, it's basically everyone has figured out the consumers are demanding products that align with their values. And what do consumers, particularly outdoor consumers, value? Well, they value products that are less harmful to the environment. And so to try and take advantage of that is wrong. And now there's actually regulations. The Federal Trade Commission's green guides, which are supposed to be updated like last year or 2 years ago or something, and they never did. But regardless, greenwashing is a very real thing that companies do. So the outdoor industry loves sustainability storytelling. It's kind of like in the DNA, right? But at what point does that cross into greenwashing, and what are maybe some of the more common greenwashing tactics that you've seen?
Well, I mean, it's all about branding, really. And I mean, you probably see this a lot too with emerger strategies. So feel free to jump in whenever. I feel like you might actually have a better answer for this. But it can come down to language, anything that is vague. So I think that is one of like the easiest things for a brand to do is just to be vague and like only give a partial truth. Or they'll just kind of use these sustainability words, like even overusing the word sustainability or eco-friendly. Those put up a lot of like red flags for me where I'm like, okay, but how?
Right,
and so if a company is not proving how they're meeting their sustainability goals, that would be kind of how I identify greenwashing. But what does that look like to a consumer? I guess they're not outlining the materials that they're using in their products. They're not outlining where that material is being extracted from or how it's being farmed. And they are just saying like, oh, eco-friendly wool, they're not saying ZQ wool farmed in New Zealand, like looking for those specific tells where they're like, oh, okay, they actually care where this material is coming from, not just the fact that wool's a natural fiber and that's why you should care, because there's still unethical practices happening in the wool industry.
Yeah.
So that's like kind of like a high level example. Yeah. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think that the any like you can talk about sustainability, and I look at sustainability first of all as a brand, right? It's about becoming the best version of yourself, and it's a journey, and acknowledging that you're not perfect but striving to do better, right? And that to me is what sustainability is. But if you have someone that markets saying now made with sustainable whatever, like that's a red flag to me. And so if it's defined as sustainable, because I hate to break it to everyone, there is no such thing as a sustainable product. They don't exist, right? Everything has an impact, and the companies that it's all about being able to substantiate your claims with data and preferably third-party certification, right? Because that
Yeah.
takes you out of it. But if someone is saying that this is our, I don't know, this is whatever claim they're making about their product, and they don't have a sustainability report, or they don't have like any data to support what they're saying. They're just saying eco-friendly. Okay, how? Like in what way? Like substantiate what you're saying, and then have some type of data to support that. If you don't have that, that's a pretty big red flag. If you're just making claims on your website and there's nothing to back that up. So to me, that's sort of what greenwashing is when it comes to brands in particular who are wanting to capture what they know is a growing market of consumers that care about this, but not actually doing the work, right? Like not actually digging into their materials, not digging into their supply chain, not understanding what it is that they're actually saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think one easy thing that I do as someone who still purchases products, because I'm alive,
Right.
is like I'll shop online. And if I maybe am like, oh, this brand looks like new, cool, I want to see what they have. And if they don't have like a clear sustainability page, and then on that page, like you're saying, Rick, they're not breaking down like the different pillars, like extraction. And I know for smaller brands, like emerging brands, maybe it's not affordable to have a full sustainability report, but you can still be transparent. And so that's what I look for on the sustainability page. Like if they don't have a sustainability page, huge red flag to begin with. But being the person that I am, I usually email them and ask them for their sustainability information. And sometimes that can push them to then update their website. Yeah. And I think the more that consumers are asking questions, the more that brands are having to be transparent. It's same with our representatives, right? Consumer pressure, public pressure, it all has a place.
Yeah. Well, no, I love that. And that's such a good point. Like, I wonder how much pressure these brands are getting from consumers. I assume it's considerable. But I also think that, I don't know really, but I know that for what we do, a lot of the pressure, and I'll give kudos to REI for their product impact standards, for at least getting these brands to, like, part of it is just, I think a lot of particularly smaller brands, they aren't even sure what questions to ask. And so having some type of like guidance to be like, hey, look, like here are some things that you need to be thinking about, right? And REI's product impact standards, I think, is a good way for brands to start thinking, well, what should we be measuring or what should we be thinking about? And they have lots of different third-party certifications, like you mentioned, wool, like, responsible wool standard and things like that. So if there's any brands out here who are like, okay, well, I'm kind of like curious what I could be doing, just Google REI product impact standards and you at least have something to base a direction off of, instead of feeling lost kind of in the sauce with all of this, right? But that's my 2 cents. So, I'm curious, as a journalist and a podcaster, I know you mentioned checking out websites, but is there anything else maybe that you do to vet sustainability claims that maybe other folks don't?
I do read the impact statements. So a lot of brands will send me their impact statement when it's released every year. And I love that they do that. I think that's great. But that's largely to do with the fact that I cover sustainability in the industry. And so I like to read those and then try to make sure that they are being truthful and then like identify any greenwashing language. So, I mean, we were talking about REI. So, of course, when they first released, I think in 2024, when they released kind of like new guidelines around PFAS, like I went first, like to the PFAS section and I was like, all right, show me the fine print here because there's no way you're removing it from everything. And they indeed were not. But the average consumer is not going to flag that, which I guess is my job to flag it for the consumer. And so, yeah, I like to read the fine print. I like to see, like, who they're in bed with in terms of financials. I think like kind of a golden rule for most journalists is to follow the money. Like who is funding these projects? Who are they collaborating with? That may have less than ethical production standards. And I also look at lawsuits. I love looking at lawsuits. Like where are these companies manufacturing, and are they polluting on the ground there? Like are they choosing to manufacture in a country that has looser environmental regulations for manufacturing? Because that matters to me in terms of like, I mean, great, they're not polluting in the United States, but like, what about all the people in Vietnam or China? Like those people still deserve to live a healthy, happy life and not get cancer because of some illegal discharge from, I don't know. I don't want to name a company because a random company that makes a rainproof jacket.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, just basic humanity of we're all sharing this planet. Let's not intentionally harm each other.
Yeah. So, I mean, like the information is there. So looking at the impact statements, looking at lawsuits, looking at financials and collaborations with like the manufacturers and stuff like that.
All right. Those are excellent tips. So we've got a few minutes here, and I'll try and get through the rest of my questions. This has been such good information, so thank you for sharing, Meg. If you could change one thing about about how the outdoor industry approaches sustainability, what might it be?
Just one.
You can provide a list if you'd like.
No, I'm joking. Well, I mean, not really. I'm not joking at all. So one thing, I think it would be accountability. I think that brands need to take accountability for their reliance on fossil fuels. I think at its core, like the kind of rolling over to industry and saying, well, this is the cheapest material, or this is what we've used since the 70s, when polyester became a really big thing. So this is just the way it has to be. I think there are really good examples of that with companies like Patagonia is very innovative. Nemo Equipment's very innovative. There's all these really amazing brands and product developers that are so smart, and I think that they have good intentions at heart. And so like take accountability for your role in the climate crisis and the amount of power that you have to enact change. Because some random girl on the internet and who knows where, like I can only change so much,
Right.
like, yeah, I can buy a hemp sweater instead of a fleece polyester one, but it all comes down to who decided to make that and who decided to make these our only options. So that would be, I think, the biggest one always for me is brands have a really big responsibility because they have a bigger impact than us, and industry in general. I mean, we can trace this all the way back to the fossil fuel industry, like we know that you make a lot of money extracting those, but that's not the way that the world is moving. So start investing in clean energy, and then you're still the big dog on top.
Yep. Love it. Okay, so let's end on a message of hope here. So what Meg, gives you hope right now, whether it's policy, innovation, consumer awareness, something else?
It is hard to find hope right now, especially if you live in the United States, I think. But I think the level of collaboration that I've experienced and that I've seen, and if we're just looking at outdoor spaces, like even collaboration across disciplines, like seeing sportsmen begin to collaborate more with kayakers and hikers and bikers, and seeing this unity across an industry that can sometimes be very divided, I think is very promising, because that's what we are. We're an outdoor community, and I think a lot of people, we feel isolated and we need that. We need community, and we need people to bounce ideas off of, and to be like, oh, you care too, you know, so you don't feel so alone. So I think that's something that gives me hope, and just like talking about these things with people like you, and knowing that even though we are on complete opposite ends of a country, you know, we're trying to talk about these things and make changes in our own communities and build these coalitions to create a better tomorrow, because that's really the only way that we're going to do it, is if we decide that we're the builders and manufacturers of something that is better.
Yeah, I love that. And that's what we're doing today. That's why we're having this interview. We're talking about this stuff, right? And just making people aware. I think most people are good-natured and good-hearted, and once they have the information, that they will generally make the better decisions. So I think we accomplished that today. So Meg, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your work and your podcast, which I'm a fan of and a listener. So where can people follow your work and support the Outdoor Minimalist?
Well, first I would say the podcasts. We're on all podcast platforms, just Outdoor Minimalist. So follow us on Apple, Spotify, all those places, wherever you listen. We also release on YouTube at The Outdoor Minimalist, and you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com. If you want frequent public lands updates, Instagram is the best place to find that, at outdoor.minimalist.book. But I would say the podcast and the newsletter. The newsletter is every Friday, and we do kind of a quick rundown of the biggest events with public lands every week. So if that's like the main topic you're concerned about, that's probably one of the better places to follow. And I mean, we talk about all types of sustainability things, so follow us anywhere and everywhere.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to head over to emergerstrategies.com for all your sustainability consulting needs, and check out our new The Compliance Ready Brand Blueprint, which is designed to get your sustainability house in order in 30 days or less.